Hey, hello. Happy Wednesday afternoon. This one is especially for people who are in my closer inner circle. So, people who are following my podcast or people who are on my women's group in Facebook. And I wanted to share something extra special with all of you today. If you have had, I don't know, like a dysfunctional family of origin, um, alcoholism, violence, abuse, whatever. And or if you've also found that you've repeated a lot of negative relationship patterns that just aren't working for you, and you think, I don't want to get into another relationship because this or that might happen. Or if neither of that's true, but you think, oh, the next time I get in a relationship, it's all going to be better and nothing about me needs to change. This one will really help you a lot. What I'm going to do today is I'm going to start out by reading a little passage from You Are the One You've Been Waiting For by Dick Schwartz, who is the founder of IFS. And as many of you already know, I'm an IFS informed coach. So I have a certificate from IFS Institute and I have received some training for them and learning how to use IFS. And I want to read to you a little bit of a passage of this book that turns out to be super eye-opening for a lot of my clients in mindful dating when I share it with them. Imagine that you inherited from your parents a magical kitchen in your home from which you can obtain any kind and quantity of food. Because your parents fed you unconditionally, you learn to do the same with your many children. They're happy because they love your food. Your food is so nourishing and satisfying that they never overeat or crave candy or other kinds of junk food. You never use food to punish or motivate them. Consequently, they trust that they're worthy of being well fed just because they're your children. They don't fight because each one knows there's plenty of food for everyone. You also give freely to the neighbors and those in need of food just for the pleasure of giving. You know that you don't need to hoard because your food supply never runs out. Then one day a man knocks on your door and offers your children a steady supply of pizza and candy if they'll take care of him emotionally. Because you and your kids are so full, you can see that he doesn't take care of his own children. And your response is, no thanks, we have plenty of food of our own. On another day, a different man knocks. He's like you in that he has many children and he feeds them generously. Those children are also happy and satisfied. He's attracted to the cuisine of your kitchen, but he doesn't need it because he has plenty of food in his own magical kitchen. His children love playing with your children and would like to live in your house, but because they know that he'll care for them no matter what happens, between the two of you, they trust him to decide where to live. You invite him to share your home, and you love how much the two of you enjoy each other's cooking. Both sets of children relish the mixed cuisine that now comes from your kitchen. Now imagine that you live in a different household. You are very poor and have little food to feed your children. Because they're starving, the youngest and weakest of your kids cry all the time and beg you to find someone, anyone, to feed them. Their desperation drives you crazy, and you lock them in the basement so that they aren't always in your hair and you're not always reminded of their suffering. That's the way your parents taught you to handle hungry children. As hard as you try to ignore the sobs of those children, you can still hear them through the floorboards. The urgency of their need is like a constant gnawing in the back of your mind. Some of your older children lose trust in your ability to take care of the family. They take on adult-like responsibilities, prodding you to work harder, to try to contain or calm the ones that are struggling in the basement, searching for food. Because these older ones aren't equipped to handle this level of responsibility, they become rigid and controlling. They're constantly critical of your work. They always criticize your performance and your habits, and they spend enormous amounts of energy trying to keep the basement children at bay. As the guy with the pizza and candy heads toward your door, the basement children smell the food before he arrives. They go insane with joy at the prospect of being fed and possibly released from their exile. They idolize the candy man and are willing to do anything to please him. You and the older kids are hungry, exhausted, and impressed by how happy the candy man makes the basement children feel. The possibility is very appealing of no longer having to deal with these basement children and instead letting them attach to someone else. Consequently, despite some misgivings about the guy's demands and the poor quality of his food, you and the older children agree to satisfy his emotional needs in return for steady meals. He turns out to be abusive at times, but your younger kids fear starving and being returned to the basement, so they just want to hold on. And also, while he's increasingly stingy with the pizza and candy, the younger kids are addicted to it. Every time you bring up the possibility of leaving, they override you. Now, imagine that the food in the story is really love, and the children are different parts of your own personality. If you identify with the first parent who has the magical kitchen, you don't need the rest of this book. And you may or may not need dating coaching. But if you identify with the second part, hold tight for a second. If you have that magical kitchen, when you probably already know, when you love and accept your parts unconditionally simply because they're in you, they're not going to be attracted by false promises and, I don't know, shams. They're not going to be attracted to the wrong people. When you find the right partner, your parts won't be dependent, demanding, protective, or easily hurt. And they won't let you put up with abuse. Instead, they're going to love your partner in different ways that will enrich your relationship with your partner. They'll add to your experience of intimacy, and they'll be secure in the knowledge that if you get hurt by him, you're there to take care of those parts. If you're like most people in our culture, however, you learned from parents and peers to exile certain parts of you. Therefore, the basement of your psyche is filled with love-starved, vulnerable inner children. Because they get so little from you, they'll be obsessed with finding someone they imagine can rescue them. And in their desperation, they'll blind you to that person's faults. They're so likely to make you pick Mr. Wrong. And then because they're so needy, they'll want you to stay with him. So I'm going to stop reading here. This is a great analogy, the magical kitchen story. It's wonderful. And it's sort of a light bulb aha moment for a lot of my clients. And the reason I'm sharing it with you today is for a few reasons. One is to sort of touch on this common theme that we have to be able to look for red flags. And the truth of the matter is, when you become self-led and from a place of self, you're able to nurture and nourish your own system. You don't need to look for red flags. Those aren't going to appeal to you. And in fact, they will just immediately repel you. And if you happen to run into someone who has a red flag, you'll be able to nurture that child that gets hurt by it, rather than thinking it's you, rather than that child blinding you to that red flag. You're going to know it right away. That child isn't going to be satisfied with crumbs from someone else's table, because you're going to develop a magic kitchen of your own, which you can do regardless of your past experience. You can tap into core self energy and provide that nourishment for your system. So that's one thing, is to sort of dispel this we have to look for red flags myth. There's no way to know all the red flags. There's no way to know all the varieties of wrong for you that people can come in. There are like over 7 billion people on the planet, and there are probably 6 billion people who will get it magnificently wrong, and you won't really want to have them in your inner circle. So that's a lot of ways to go wrong. So that's the first thing. The second thing that I really want to touch on has come up through a recent conversation I've had. So, a friend of mine has been watching the videos and reached out to me and said, "Hey, I'm just wondering, do you work with couples at all who have problems where one person in the couple has a trauma or abuse history, or is coming out of an abusive marriage and now is finding a healthy partnership? Because that's my situation, and it's really hard. It's so much harder than I thought it would be." And what she has shared is that she wasn't prepared for things to be good. She has a whole system that's set up around defending herself, around waiting for the other shoe to fall, keeping herself safe and protected from abusive people, that when it doesn't happen, she almost doesn't even know how to deal with it. And in fact, when he's like her current partner, when he's like patient with her, loving and understanding, she almost gets angry, because if it's so easy for him, why wasn't it easy for other people before? And she hadn't, she didn't do dating coaching. She hadn't been through this program, and she wasn't really prepared to deal with the fact that all of these parts, all of these basement children are still there. And they're having a different experience now, but the fact remains they're still there. They get activated. The protective children who tried to manage the system also get activated. It's just that the current situation doesn't require their help. So the bottom line is, we develop these parts of us, these exiles and these protectors, and we learn all of this stuff in order to navigate particular circumstances. And when we do a better job of picking the next partner, those parts still get active because that's how they think relationships must be managed. This is not, in their world, an optional thing. This is, from their background, a must do. And the more you can cultivate self energy, and mindfulness is a huge key to being able to cultivate it, the more you can cultivate that self energy and bring that to your inner system, the better able you will be when you're shifting relationship patterns to tolerate the activation that sometimes comes when you're happy, when you have a great relationship, because it's going to happen. Your parts are still going to have reactions even when things are good. So those were the two things I really wanted to go over today is, really understanding this magical kitchen metaphor and what it says about um, being able to nurture your own system and not look for red flags, because when your system is nourished, you don't need to worry about looking for that. Your parts aren't going to go there. And secondly, knowing how to nourish your system, because even when things are good, your system can get activated. So that's all I have for you today. I hope you've enjoyed this video. I would love to hear what worked, what didn't work, and I'd love it if you'd reach out and let me know some other things that might be helpful, because I really want to create content that matters to you and helps you move forward on your journey. So let me know how I can do that. Have a great day. Bye.